Her name is Maria, and she was born many weeks premature in a small village in Eastern Europe. She was blind from birth. At the age of 15, she came to the United States, where a talented surgeon determined that one of her eyes could possibly work if Maria received a corneal transplant. A donor was located. The surgery was done. And at the age of 15, having lived her whole life in the darkness of blindness, the doctors sat Maria in front of a mirror and slowly removed the bandages from her eyes. Thanks to a video taken from over her right shoulder, we are privileged to watch the look on her face as slowly, for the first time in her life, Maria begins to see. She looks at herself in the mirror and her face fills with astonishment. She's never seen anything. And now she can see herself. And she squeals in absolute delight. I'm so pretty. Thanks to the marvels of a smartphone video on YouTube, we are now privileged to be witnesses to miracles. Miracle moments are now posted on Facebook, and we can see them. Sadly, we cannot see the miracle moment in today's gospel passage, but we can imagine it. The Gospel of John tells us about a man who was born blind. Like 15-year-old Maria, this man had apparently never seen a thing. He had lived in darkness and begged for his daily bread. Like so many of us, even today, the people in Jesus' time, well, they tried to figure out, why do bad things happen to people? Why does illness happen, especially to a child? Why does anyone suffer? One of the answers they found in the Old Testament was rather simple. If someone suffers from a physical illness or deformity, it is, most likely, a punishment for sin. The man in John's Gospel was blind from birth, so people concluded that either he somehow was a sinner or his parents were sinners. The blindness must somehow be a punishment for that sin. So the whole family lives with the darkness of this shame and judgment. Jesus notices the blind man's suffering. Jesus smears clay onto his eyes, perhaps recalling how God created man and woman out of the clay back in the book of Genesis. Jesus is creating, he's recreating, giving this man and his family a chance for a new beginning. Jesus says to the man, "Go and wash." And the man departs. And this is where I wish we had a smartphone. What happened when he washed in the waters of the pool? Was there lightning, or an angel choir, or some other sound or sign from heaven? Or was this a quiet miracle, like so many miracles that happen around us each day without our even noticing? And what was the look on this man's face when, for the first time in his entire life, this man could see? How did he respond when he saw the glint of sunlight off a ripple in the water? How strange the world must have looked when you're seeing it for the first time. Imagine being, 35 years old and seeing a tree for the first time, or a cloud. Imagine seeing your mother's face for the first time. Because up to this point, you've only known her by the sound of her voice and the smell of her skin and hair. Imagine walking back from the pool and for the first time you see a horse or a snake or an infant. And while mirrors were scarce at the time of Jesus, did this man see his reflection, perhaps in the waters of the pool? What did he think of his own face? He had lived his whole life blind. What was he thinking? What was he feeling as he saw everything for the first time? How would you feel? And remember, he was healed by Jesus, but up to this point in John's Gospel, he's never actually seen Jesus. He spoke with Jesus, but he hasn't seen him. And now Jesus, who is God's love in the flesh, well, he's gone. In other words, this man had been healed by a God he could not see. Aren't we healed by a God we cannot see? After the surgery, when Maria looked at herself in that mirror for the first time, she squealed, "I'm so pretty." The man in the gospel sees the world for the first time. He joyfully tells people how he has been healed and by whom. And what do people start to tell him? You're ugly. Now, to be fair, they don't use that exact word in the Gospel of John, but isn't that the message they send to him by their words and their actions? He's just been healed. And almost immediately they drag Jesus before a religious tribunal. Their hurt, hate-filled words are hurled at him. Who's the man who healed you? Where is he now? Why did he heal you on the Sabbath? The man who healed you must be a sinner, and you're a sinner, and your parents are sinners. And finally, they say to this newly healed man, "Get out, you who are full of sin." They can't stand him in their midst. They've sent a clear message to this man and his parents. You're ugly. Sadly, churches and synagogues and faith communities have a consistent track record of telling people that they're not welcome, somehow not lovable, somehow judged to be ugly. But what does Jesus do when he finds out this man has been thrown out? Well, Jesus, the light of the world, goes and finds the man that the religious leaders have discarded. And Jesus, the light of the world, helps this man to see things clearly, not just on a physical level, but in every way. Jesus helps this man to see that he's deeply loved by the God who created him. Jesus helps this man to see that God the Father does not want him to live with shame or guilt. Jesus helps this man to see that his parents are beloved of God. Jesus helps this man to see that the darkness of his past doesn't control his present or his future. Jesus helps this man to see that no darkness, no sin, not guilt, not fear, nor the darkness of confusion or anger, no darkness is stronger than Jesus' light. And Jesus helps him to see that even when everyone else is casting him aside and telling him that he's not worthy or not welcome, God's response is staring him in the face. You are a deeply beloved child of God, created in God's image. This, and so much more, is what Jesus helps this man to see. And this is what Jesus wants us to see. The world in which we live well, it has darkness in it. And at times it can be difficult for us to see where the light is, where the hope is, where God can be found. People still get sick, and depression weighs some of us down, and joblessness happens, and economic stress is real, and that feels like darkness. People are angry and scared. Old hatreds flare up. A country gets invaded. A terrible earthquake happens. A marriage falls apart. Political leaders get better at lying. The darkness of human brokenness sometimes tries to hide the truth, but the truth can't stay hidden. Racism, well, it's still real. Christians in some parts of the world face death simply for being Christians. Children's lives are literally cut short, and we call it a choice. And at other times, we choose not to see the dignity of one of our neighbors because, well, you know about them. They're the illegals. Injustice seems so strong in some places. And I think Satan whispers in our ears, see, there's really no hope. You see, God really isn't going to help. And you're never going to get better, and the world won't get better. And that can feel like darkness. Then along comes Jesus, the Jesus we can't quite see, and he declares, go and wash. Go and wash. Wash. Wash in the waters of baptism. Jump into the pool of the Lord's love. Splash around in the waves of his mercy. And then you'll see yourself as God sees you. And you'll see each other as God sees. And you'll see the world as God sees. And you'll see your future full of hope as God sees it. In our gathering together, in our hearing of the Word, in our sharing a holy communion on this Sunday of Lent, we encounter the life-giving, healing presence of Christ, who washes away our darkness and bathes us in the light of his love.